Hello, how do you do? We're going to start a new series today, a new series of different things. It's going to be very exciting. It's called The Art of the Long Song. Drawing things out to unnecessary lengths, impregnable fortresses of music that really put off a lot of people. But why do they put off a lot of people? Is it as if people are only going to live 3-minute lives? They don't have time in their 3-minute lives to listen to 10 minutes of music because they're dead 3 times over by the time it gets to that end. Well, it's not that, is it? Is it just that they're complicated? Yes, I think it literally is. Just that they're complicated. Although I think a fair amount of people have really short attention spans, so that's not to be ruled out. But that's not really what I can address. That's way beyond my capabilities. But what I can do is try and make long songs more accessible by kind of just explaining what's going on in them. Not to a ridiculously detailed level, and that is not going to be the focus of this one. If you want detail, then you want the Deep Dive series, which currently is on Aurora. Aurora will no doubt run out of material at some point, and I will stop doing Aurora and do someone else. I might start doing someone else earlier, but it depends on how much time I have, really. But yeah, that's what you want for detail. This is going to be looking purely at sort of the length of the songs. Okay, so it's not just the length, sorry, but the structure of the songs. It's not going to be about what individual harmonic detail there is or any of that stuff. That's going to be something for another series. So that's what we're looking at. Do we have already any understanding of long songs, how they differ? We know like pop songs, and we know partly through the Deep Dive series. Go and have a listen. What to expect from a general song. We would expect often an intro, a verse, possibly a pre-chorus, then a chorus, okay? And that would be like our first bit of the song. Maybe an interlude after that, leading into another verse, another pre-chorus, another chorus. Basically a repetition of what we had before, with some slight differences. Often that chorus then is a little bit longer the second time, but not always. That then often leads us to a new section, whether it be a bridge or maybe an altered version of what we've had before. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we just don't have a bridge and we go back to a verse and we try for a third verse and chorus, or maybe we just get an extension of the chorus into like an instrumental. There are lots of things that can happen after that point, but broadly it separates into these 4 sections of like verse, pre-chorus, chorus. That's one section. We do that again, we do something different, and then often we come back to some of the material that we're familiar with for the end. So it's then generally those 4 sections. Longer songs, though, can't often just spread that material out for a long period of time. They end up doing different things. They have more sections, they have more repetition, they have new material more often, or they have it over a longer span of time. Sometimes they do just take longer over the same material. Anyway, I've basically come up with like 10 standard types, which I have written out here. Let's have a look. There they are. Can you read that? If not, I will go through each one. Basically, there may well be others, and we may add to a list, but these are sort of like ones you can find in, let's say, everyday music, but everyday long music. So number 1 is the most simple. I call it the locked groove. It's basically a song that just does its jam constantly throughout its runtime, or almost constantly. So it's basically just this one groove going on for however long it is. Often you get this on shorter songs, but sometimes you get it on longer songs as well. Like, for instance, Give Up the Funk by Parliament. Let's just get that up. That's off the Mothership Connection Parliament album, which is A classic, Give Up the Funk, is, yeah, the sixth track off that, 5 minutes 48. Not actually that long, is it? And one of the shorter songs on the album, well, okay, maybe halfway. Actually, okay, it's not. It's like the third longest song on the album. Never mind. Some very interesting things on that. 5:48. You know, anything pushing past 5 minutes, I would regard as long in music terms. Obviously, in sort of film terms, that's nothing, isn't it? Nothing. Although, would you rarely see a scene in a film take 5 minutes 48? I think that would even be quite a long scene in a film. There are definitely films that wouldn't consider that a long scene, but in a general film, I think that would be. Anyway, the point is, this is way pushing past our average for music, which, in Western pop music maybe, rather than the rest of the world. But our average would be something like 3.5 minutes, maybe a bit shorter than that, maybe 3, maybe 2.5, but somewhere around that kind of length. So this is broadly like twice as long as that. So even though this is a shorter long song, it still is definitely a long song. And yeah, it just features this a set of hooks which all go over the same groove the whole way through. And yeah, that's just our first one. Number one, the locked groove. Then we have number two, the Great Divide. Okay, which is also known as binary form, or I also call it long binary form, to distinguish it from something that has just like verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. That would be binary form, but it wouldn't be long binary. Long binary is defined by something that has this great divide somewhere around the halfway point, or maybe later, or maybe earlier. But the point is, it just divides in half, and then has like one half that is very different to the second half. So an example of this might be The Beautiful Ones by Prince. Again, not super long, but The Beautiful Ones really has this massive change. It basically has a full normal song, and then after the normal song, for its coda, if you like, it just has a new piece of music on the end. It's almost entirely different to the piece of music that has come before. So that's a great divide. One that almost qualifies for this is Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, but let's just get that on axis. But it's a little more complicated, and it's slightly more of a good example of the next type, which is the Hollywood blockbuster. Let's just get Stairway to Heaven up there before I explain this one. The Hollywood blockbuster, or just the blockbuster, or for many people, just sonata form. I'm just updating these, right? I'm making them all hip. I'm making them exciting. Sonata form has been around for an extremely long time, as has binary form, and as has locked groove, which is essentially just a singular form, like one section repeating. All of these things are old in music. Frankly, longer forms were more common in older music. Shorter things are really just with the advent of things like vinyl, which you had to be short on. But yeah, so Stairway to Heaven, which is 8 minutes long. So now we're into, that's decently long, isn't it? This really has 3 acts to some degree. You could argue about 4, but I'm not here for that argument right now. The main thing about this blockbuster form is that it has this 3-act structure, just like a Hollywood blockbuster would. 3 acts, we have the hero learns of something going wrong. Maybe they regret the call to action, or they avoid the call to action, and then they meet a mentor and they take the call to action. That's all in Act 1. Then Act 2 would be them following out the call to action and the development of everything that went on in the first half to epic proportions. Maybe it comes with a big sadness or a real nadir for the experience of the hero. And then in Act 3, they come back stronger than ever and defeat the bad guys, and all is restored. But we've been on a journey, so it all feels more meaningful. The restoration of exactly the same stuff as we had before feels more meaningful. Yes. Okay, so that's basically a hero's journey. How does that go in music? Well, it doesn't necessarily have all those narrative ideas, but they are reflected in what happens in the music. We have the exposition, as it's known in sonata form, which is the setting out of the main themes in that first section. And then we have a development of those themes in the second section. And then in the third section, we have somewhat of a recapitulation, which would mean going back to the initial section themes as they were at the beginning. Now, sonata form has somewhat devolved from that really precise delineation of sections over time. And sonata form, since the early 20th century really, has become more of a just like an ABA ternary kind of form, where we have this A at the beginning setting out our themes, and then the B, which is intended as a development, ends up just going off the deep end where you can't necessarily tell the similarities anymore. So I have chosen to not make that a specific different category where we have a true development, where the ideas in the first section are really flashed out and changed, but instead this B section is anything that's different to the first section, and that's more in keeping with a blockbuster to some degree. And then we do still need that return though for the A section at the end. It can't go off somewhere else, otherwise it will be a different idea. So Stairway to Heaven is like this. And I will go through probably these songs in specific episodes at some point as well, but I'm just giving you a brief understanding of what's going on in these songs to explain the categories. Stairway to Heaven starts with its all lovely stuff on the guitar. That goes on for a while. We get verses, we kind of get choruses, and then it sort of changes into this slightly more lush section, which more has a verse chorus style to it. Actually, it feels a bit like a development of the first section, and then arguably we have this great divide between that section, the folky comfortable section, and then the more rocky ending, which has the guitar solo, famed guitar solo, and the real big shouting stuff from Robert Plant, really high aggressive singing. So that then is a big change from what we had before. I actually tend to group both of those in the development section, or the B section, the Act 2, if you like. And then Act 3 for this is actually very short towards the end. As that rockiness sort of fades out, we get, and she's buying the stairway to heaven at the end. So it brings back that theme from the beginning, just for a very brief moment right at the end to sort of nicely round things out in this ABA hero's journey Hollywood blockbuster kind of structure. Okay, got it? All right, let's move on. That took a while. The Road to Nowhere is the next one. Now, Road to Nowhere by Talking Heads is absolutely not this. It is not a long song anyway. And even if it were a long song, it still wouldn't qualify for this category, because this mode is similar to the first one, Locked Groove, based around endless repetition. It doesn't have to be literally the same groove repeating over and over again. Instead, we can have verses and choruses which repeat. The point is, the verse and the chorus, they have to go verse, chorus, 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 leading us nowhere, leading us back on ourselves over and over again. That's the point. So there's a road leading us to from a verse to a chorus, but then it goes back and leads us back to the verse. It goes round and round and round. It leads nowhere, right? So an example, there are loads of examples in folk music of this. Folk music is often built around endless verses and choruses, but an extreme example maybe might be Desolation Row by Bob Dylan, which at basically 11 minutes 19 extraordinary length, and it has 10 verses with 2 extra instrumental sections, which are basically just the verses and choruses again. You could argue there's not choruses, but that's for something for a different day. So overall, basically 12 of the same section repeated over and over and over again. They all end with the same words, Desolation Row, unless they have the harmonica solo. So it feels very, very much like this regurgitated form over and over again. That's The Road to Nowhere. I may have sounded down on that particular style there, but I actually do quite enjoy it in the right situation. Bob Dylan has a huge amount of those. So far, all understandable and fine, right? These are straightforward. Number 5, also fairly straightforward. I call it the TV series. But again, this is more of a classic structure. This is like a rondo form. Rondo form, not very common in pop music, but it does come up from time to time. An example of this would be the not very pop Hocus Pocus by Focus. So the idea here is that we have one main theme that keeps coming round. And after that theme, we have something new that is not the theme, not necessarily related to stuff that has come before, just like a TV series will get or whatever it might be, and then after that it will give us some new material. It will be grounded in the same actors, just like a song will be probably the same players between sections, but the material will be different, and that's how this works. Hocus Pocus by Focus is a classic. It has this going for its theme, quite a long theme really, and sort of two-parter. And then we have, to begin with, the thing, right? We have that. And that's our first episode, if you like. And then it goes round and round. To be honest, there are quite a lot of repetitions in the episodes in that song, so it's not a perfect example of a rondo or a TV series, but it's very close, and it really has that recurring main theme the whole way through. How long is it? Let's just check. Oh no, not Hocus Pocus by Jamie T. By Focus. There is an extended edition as well, which I'm a little suspicious of. But yeah, it's about 7 minutes. It's about 7 minutes, maybe a little shorter. And it just keeps on going back to this theme, then to something weird, then back to the theme, then to something weird. Very successful song in a lot of ways, that one, considering it's so strange. Number 6 is A True Long Boy. And these are quite special and rare to some degree, but they are just songs with a song form, i.e. verse, chorus, something else, ending. But they take up a long period of time doing that. And I haven't found many examples of these because they sort of lie in the cracks between what we would assume is a long song and what is very clearly like one or the other, right? They are sort of in this middle category. But one example is Hyper Ballad by Björk. And Hyper Ballad is absolutely amazing as a song, just incredibly beautiful and unique. But as well as that, it's 5 minutes. What is it? 5 minutes. Where is it? Oh, there. 5 minutes 21. So again, not the longest, but still over 5 minutes. 5 minutes 21, and it really just has verse, chorus, with quite a long intro, let's say. Quite a long intro. Verse, chorus. And then we have this extended chorus and outro after that, which goes on for like 2 minutes. So adding all that together, it has the same elements as you would expect in a shorter song, but they're just played out significantly longer than we would expect them to be. So so that fits in quite a unique category of a true long boy. After this we get to ones which tends to be of a longer style, with number 7 not always being this, but the other ones being quite often really much longer than the ones before. So number 7 is the independent film. So very different to a blockbuster, right? Maybe you've seen some independent films. Sometimes if I'm feeling more full of whimsy, I might call it the Backrooms category. The Backrooms film that's recently come out is not an independent film, as we know. Well, actually, I think some people might regard it as, but it's definitely much more mainstream than, say, Monsters by Gareth Edwards, for instance. That's what really comes to mind as an independent film for me, but there's loads. Anything by Lucrecia Martel, for instance. Anything, most things that would be nominated for Best Foreign Film in the Oscars are often independent films. I don't know why Lucrecia Martel was the first one to come to mind. Almodovar films often feel... there's so many directors who are making independent films, way more than are making blockbusters, obviously. But for instance, Nomadland by Chloe Zhao feels much more like an independent film than The Eternals, which is clearly a blockbuster. As I assume. I haven't seen the Eternals. I haven't seen Nomadland, and I would recommend it. So what we're dealing with when we're talking about an independent film or a Backrooms song is this concept of things being very, very, very liminally connected. So rather than in these other situations where we've had these really clear delineations of sections in a Backrooms song or an independent film song, we have much more smooth boundaries. This often comes then to ambient music. Ambient music feels a lot more slowly changing, and minimalist music as well, slowly changing. So there's not very hard boundaries where we suddenly experience something different. An example of this, and not a perfect example actually, but one that I think more or less fits, is 1-1 by Brian Eno off his classic 70s album Ambient 1, Music for Airports. This is a 17-minute song, so much longer than the ones we've been talking about so far, and it is 17 and a half minutes long. It really is also sort of we could categorize it as a road to nowhere, because it does keep looping the same material, but as well as that, it has much softer boundaries that mean that each of the repetitions are slightly different, slightly more one way or another in terms of their feel or in terms of their texture, and they're not hard, solidly contained things. Some are longer than others, for instance. So arguably that's an independent film or a road to nowhere, but it kind of fits both ideas. Most ambient music will fit this particular thing. So yeah, go and look. I wanted to check, but I didn't actually get round to it. There's an album by Locust Toy Box, which is a moniker for David Firth, an album called Drownscapes. I've listened to some of his others, and I'm much less fond of them, but Drownscapes I think is really good. And yeah, specifically, most of these songs I think would fit this category as well, but I haven't been back to check, so don't quote me on that, but go and listen to them, because it's a really interestingly textured album. And after this, then we get to some really specific big structures, and number 8 is the novel. So a novel, well, what do we know about novels? Bleeding long, but also, the main thing is that it follows a story from chapter 1 to the end. Generally, that's how novels work. And we have recurring things, recurring characters, recurring settings, lots of things that connect from the beginning to the end in complicated ways, not in the same way as a verse and chorus will connect together often. It'll be much more detailed. And so an example of this is 2112 by Rush, which is a 20 minutes and a half song. It is, it's great. And it has a lot of themes that continue through, as well as the texture often is almost the same from section to section. We have big pauses in this, which make it a little more divided than often we might get for a novel, although that kind of works like chapters, which is pretty cool. But yeah, like a lot of the riffs which are in the overture at the beginning, and it's a real overture because it sets out lots of the things that are then going to happen through the songs. It's very cool. But then we also develop those and change them and come up with new material. So it feels like much more of a rich and complicated experience than these prior ideas, much more than a Hollywood blockbuster, for instance. So yeah, good example of that one. Then we have the most sort of unusual, I would say, is the photo album. An example of this is 3 Days by Jane's Addiction, which is not as long as the previous one, but 3 Days is 10.5 minutes, I think. Yeah, nearly 11 minutes. And 3 Days has this grand scheme where we have, this introduction section, very dark and brooding, and then it sort of blossoms into this second section, which is much more energetic and full of life, but also has these dips and valleys inside it. But it's always got this thumping, plodding forwards kind of rhythm and excitement to it. Then after that, we have I actually need to go and plug in my computer because I'm about to run out of battery. So just give me a moment. Back we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so the photo album, Jane's Addiction. Yeah, we have this first section, this second section, and then this third section, and then this fourth section. And the point is, each of them, they're connected in some ways, but the connection is much weaker than in a novel. While we do have somewhat of a narrative connecting all of these things, it's more like glimpses of different scenes rather than this continuous connective tissue, which is more what we get in 2112. Here we have these really different sections giving us really different music. And so I see this, more as like you're looking through a photo album and you're seeing all these cool moments, but you're missing quite a lot of the actual story that's behind it. So that's number 9. And then number 10 is kind of the most annoying one. I haven't found a good one of these. An example of a jukebox would be from it would be Yummy 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 is the one I've got here, from The Residents. Anyone familiar with The Residents? Yeah, of course that didn't come up. Residents are a weird old band. They're still going, probably with different members, I'd imagine, but they've been going since the 70s. And I think since the 70s, maybe since before. And one of their albums is this, The Third Reich and Roll. Sorry if that was a jump scare upsetting for anyone involved, but it's a ridiculous album. It's meant as essentially surreal, sort of anti-art comedy stuff. And both tracks on here are basically compilations of different elements of different songs, some known, some not well known, some just entirely made up, but there's very little connective tissue through the length, and it's quite long, as you see, or maybe you don't see. 17:48, no, you don't see. 17:48 for the first track, 18:34 for the second track. So both of these tracks really long and just an onslaught of different sections that have absolutely nothing or very little to do with each other. and they just move from thing to thing, and it's like, anyway, here's this. Not my favorite. Definitely not my favorite. I'm a fan of meaning, first and foremost. So there are our sections. That's basically what we have, and that I think will do for an intro to this concept. And I'm now going to record on a different video me going through a song and sort of applying it to these different sections. So see you in a mo. Have a good day and a good life if this is all you ever watch. I feel sorry for you. Go and watch something else like, like one of these films I've been talking about, Monsters by Gareth Edwards. It's good. It's very enjoyable. Okay, see you soon.